Yeah.
All right, welcome to Artcasters episode 339. And man, it has been a long time. I just realized I have no idea what we say at the beginning of these things. I just
forgot.
got
Yeah, it's
back.
been a long time for you. I forgot. You
Yeah,
haven't hosted in a while.
I took a long break. Part of it was I got really sick again, and then part of it was I've been all over traveling to all over kinds of crazy stuff. But anyway, just got back from Banff in Canada. But we have Guminelly here, Emily Gunnell, and we'll let her introduce herself in a minute. But before we get started, Scott, where can we find your stuff?
Well, first, I guess the only thing really I want to talk about right now is my Kickstarter, which has, I think we're at like 24 hours before it's over. So if you want to get on that, it is a kids versus zombie adventure comic. It's like Goonies meets Night of the Living Dead. If you're a fan of like the Goonies, Monster Squad, E.T., Explorers, all those great 80s action adventure films starring kids as the heroes, or a more modern take would be like Stranger Things. Just imagine that, but fighting zombies. It's available on Kickstarter. Just go to youngandthedead.com. It will take you right there. If you're watching this live, if you're not watching this live, unless you're watching it in the next 24 hours from when we record this, it'll be over and you will have missed out. So definitely check that out. Yeah, we'll see. We're getting close to another stretch, or the first stretch goal actually. So I definitely want to hit that. I think we're about a little more than $400 away from that, or a little less than $400, I think. So we definitely want to hit that, so everyone can get this cool 3D print that comes with 3D glasses. So let's make that happen, people.
Yeah, and you don't want to miss that because there's also variant covers from lots of cool artists and me.
One of them is here tonight hosting the show.
So that'll be fun. I released my short film that I've been working on for a while, Shades. It's available to watch, and I just got word that I've got a backer who will fund me applying to some film festivals for that.
Awesome.
So that'll be fun to see if we can win some stuff. And but you can go watch that at coreykerr.com/shades. It's on my YouTube channel. It's on my Vimeo channel. I have mentioned it on Instagram and Twitter. So, and if you just go to coreykerr.com. And Christopher says Shades is great, and I agree. I think it's a fun one.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think you're gonna win a lot of awards based on the ones you won for. What is it? Yeah. What your heart out? What is that?
Yeah. Put
your heart into it.
Put your heart into it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Put your heart into it, and then Be Mine. Those two both won. Be Mine did really well, actually. I had like a 60% over 50% acceptance rate on all the things.
That's right.
Put Your Heart Into It had like a 45% acceptance rate until COVID hit, and then magically it just started losing all the time. So, and they kept the money for all the applications that they turned down. So anyway, so that'll be fun with Shades. And Emily has a comic that you guys should check out. So Emily, why don't you tell us about that, and then we'll jump into the topic.
Yeah, it's on Webtoons Canvas. It's called Seeing Red, action drama with some superpowers. Jolly good fun. It's I will be posting more about. I have updates, but they're not official yet. So, but it'll be up soon. So more episodes. So right now I just have the submission to, if anybody's like Webtoon readers, they had a call to action contest. The only thing that's there right now is my submission to the contest, but more will come. It's a really, really big comic. So yeah, there's that. And then I'm Guminelly across all channels. So if you look up Guminelly on a channel and you can't find me on, whatever it is, because I'm not there. So Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. I have TikTok, but it's kind of slow on TikTok for me. So yeah.
Yeah. And I just took about a month off. and now Josh has taken some time off as well. And everybody who watches this channel will know that he's got a lot of publishing things on his plate and everything. So he's getting some of that stuff ready to go and taking some time off. So we'll be excited to have him back whenever he's ready. But yeah, so let's talk
back together eventually.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. So I'll kick this off here with my recollection of things, and then Emily, you can correct me, and we'll kind of I kind of want to jump into the topic and stuff. But Emily was a student of mine years ago, and a TA as well. She was my TA for a while, and as I recall, you were in the student-run advertising agency.
Mm-hmm.
When I was up there. My office was in there.
Yeah.
And I remember you sort of playing with the idea of doing side projects for a long time. Like you would like start something and kind of just whatever, and then you'd abandon it, and then you would like wait a while, and then you'd start something else. And I just kept bugging you like, hey, you got to draw, you got to do it, you got to draw. And so then you started drawing, but like your art wasn't great. It was, you know what I mean? And I was like trying to get you to understand like, hey, you don't need to draw like me, but here are some things that you probably should look at doing because what you're doing isn't really working. And I think the whole time that I was saying that, I think you thought, because you kept fighting me on it. You're just, I don't want to do that. And I don't, I think you were trying to be like, I don't want to draw like you, which maybe I wasn't clear, but I wasn't trying to make you draw like me. I was trying to make you draw better. And then I don't know what happened. And then it was like, you just went through this boom tube and you got super good really fast and haven't stopped drawing since. It's been like you had kind of like all these kind of starts and stops and fits. And then it was kind of not great art for a while, and then starts and stops. And then all of a sudden it was like, I don't know what happened. I don't know if you just decided to take it seriously or it clicked or whatever. I remember you coming to me and saying, I realized what you were saying now. That I thought you were trying to make me draw like you, and I don't really like thick ink lines and and stuff like that. But I realized what you're saying now about what was wrong with what I was doing. And so I fixed that, and you fixed it in a different way than I was suggesting, and it worked really well, but you just kind of like took off, and it was great. So I'm curious, as somebody who, like I didn't draw, like I kind of drew here and there a little bit as a kid and, whatever. And I would take a couple years off and I'd draw a picture or two or whatever. And I didn't really take it seriously until I was an adult. So I'm curious, as another person who really kind of hit it big as an adult, what is your side of that story? And then I think the three of us can talk about like how you teach yourself to draw and like what are some of the things that you do to do that.
Yeah, so like I was definitely like the kind of standard like all kids are artists. Like I was that. Yeah. But yeah, I was very like, as like a teenager and as like I remember in middle school and stuff, like I was somebody who would like sit down at my bed, put in headphones, like listen to an album on repeat and just sketch in my sketchbook. So like I drew a lot throughout childhood, like up until I had to start thinking about like what I wanted to do with my life. And then like midway through high school, I started to see drawing as a waste of time. And so I remember I still doodled all the time, but I didn't take it seriously anymore. And I remember like really watering down my art style to like really almost stick figure-y stuff, and kind of just left it at that, would doodle on the margins. And then in college, I really like just didn't feel happy with, like, I remember I wasted so many elective credits taking so many different kinds of classes just so I could figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And like the ones that made me happy were the creative ones, and that bothered me because like you grow up being told you're not going to make any money. And so I ditched that for a really long time. I got like super like, what is anything? And then like took a semester off and spent it all in China. And then I came back and did a communications major. And then from there, and I still started as like journalism instead of visual, where, you know, you learn graphic design and stuff. I did not understand the concept of how people made art on a computer. Didn't get it. And then, yeah, I started taking those classes, kind of opened my eyes to like Photoshop, digital painting. And then I went from there, and then I did tons of like one-shot illustration type things. So the Visual Society on campus used to have weekly contests. They have a semester, like you have a whole semester for a contest at the end of the semester. They used to have them every week. And so I would submit to most of them, and nobody really was doing digital art in the communications major because it's graphic design stuff. So people were like, wow, look at that, because I was drawing instead of doing photo composites and stuff. And I guess that made me want to do more. And so anyways, I just kind of like snowballed, and then but at one point, I was on, I think it was when it was 48-hour art check. I visited, I don't remember, I feel like you initiated, you're like, we got to talk about how you stopped drawing.
Yeah.
And that's like what the episode was like, we got to get you to draw again.
We did a few episodes where they were kind of just me and Josh ganging up on people trying to get them to do stuff. Like you were on there, Stephen Henderson was on there, a couple people like that, yeah. And
I had like decided that I wanted to have like a store and sell stuff. That was my little mini dream. I have different dreams now, and that's fine. But like, and it's still up. So like, if you want to buy stuff from me, okay, cool. It's on my website, Guminelly.com. But like, I was wanting to take that a little bit more seriously, and kind of, you guys were like, well, you gotta make more stuff. And yeah, that was kind of, and then my receiving end of the feedback. I remember one of the things was I was doing my senior project. Mm-hmm. This is the feedback that I remember. I remember you were like, you got to change your line art. It's so thin. And I probably was like, well, you do like crazy thick line art. Of course you think it's thin, you know? Yeah. And I remember I did that whole project, but I think my response to that ended up, I went lineless for years. Yeah. Like,
well, because you did which still blows me away that you're able to do this, because this is after you got quite a bit better. You did that where you drew a page a day. You painted a page a day of that children's book.
That was lineless.
Oh, yeah, and that was all lineless.
Yeah.
But my comment, just to clarify, my comment was because you were doing like the beginner thing that most beginners do.
The thin black stroke?
Yeah, the thin black stroke. No line weight and no thought for placement of the line, and no line variation to it. It was like a 1 pixel thick black stroke on everything, whether that shape needed to have a line around it or not. And it's just the quintessential, like, I just got an iPad and I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, and it's funny because I remember being like, I'm not doing that, but I was zoomed in.
Yeah, right.
To like, like it was beautiful when it was, like I was looking at the 10 pixels,
Right.
But like I made them to be giant. Like I printed out because I made tarot card size cards, and I made them big enough that you could print it out on a 32-inch thing. Because I did make a poster. I still have it. Actually, I'm not going to get it because that would be, it's buried. Yeah. But like it was giant, so I made them to be giant. And so anyways, like, yeah, the line weight probably would have translated better if I had smaller, or just not zoomed in as much. But yeah, I remember that project was, I was very proud of it. It would take me way less time to do now. It would look way better now. I mean, it would have looked way better even if I made it like 2 or 3 years ago. Yeah. But yeah, I went full lineless for a really long time. The only reason why I don't now is because I make comics, and you just lose a lot of emotion in facial expressions and gestures when you don't have the line art. You can get it. It's just way harder. So
what was the change for you between all the starts and stops and the kind of doing it intermittently? What changed in your mind or in your life to where you just started doing it consistently all the time?
I mean, honestly, like the art check that we did, you and Josh were like, listen, you can make this happen, just do it. And like I also am like, put urgency on things that don't have urgency. So I'm somebody who's like, but what if I die early and I don't do the things that I wanted to do? Yeah. Or so-and-so did this when they were my age and I haven't done that yet. I'm behind. And then I freak out. So definitely fear driven, but also I formed the habit and I made it happen type of a thing. And I was just focused on just turn stuff out, just make stuff. And then when you finish it, make the next thing. Now I'm like driven by, I have a story that I love with all my heart, and I need to make sure that other people actually read it at some point. So like, yeah, the thing that drives me now is, well, I want to have finished this thing because I'm thinking this is like a 5-year project. So like, I want it to be done at some point. You know what I mean? Like it's crazy, but I already have like another idea for what I'm going to do when I'm done with this one. So I got stuff to do. Right. So that's kind of why I turn stuff out now, is I just am like, I've got to go.
Yeah. There's that old existential principle or whatever of like, you're going to die, and that's what gives your life meaning. That
terrifies me.
Yeah. It doesn't, I don't know, maybe I'm old now, but it doesn't terrify me anymore, but it is one of those like limiting factors where it adds value to the time that I have. Because if I had like an infinite amount of time, well, whatever. But like, I'm like, no, I started in my 30s and, I've only got another 40 to 80 years left. I don't know how old I'm going to be, but I figure by the time I'm 90, people are going to be living until they're 120. So, I don't know how long my arm's going to hold up, or my hand or anything, or my eyesight or whatever. And so like, there's a limited amount of time to get stuff done. And so, yeah, that's a big motivating factor for me too. So Scott, I'm curious, because I know you didn't go to art school. You did a little bit of college, but you're likely mostly self-taught as well in drawing, right?
Yeah, and that's the one thing I kind of was going to ask Emily, because it sounded like you in college, you were just kind of finding your way. You didn't really know exactly what path you wanted to take, and it wasn't until afterwards. Or were you still in college when you did the?
Still in college, so she became the art director, but because I teach in communication, she was a communication major, and so we don't have like an illustration track or anything. It's all like tools, software, a little bit of creative thinking and composition and stuff. And so if you want to go with illustration, you've got to kind of strike out on your own.
Yeah. Because what because when I get the question, well, should I go to art school or should I, it's hard for me to answer because to me, I think different people learn in different ways.
Yeah.
I mean, I learned a lot. I didn't go to quote unquote art school. I went to a community college and they had an art program, a commercial art program. And it was, and there was a course on comics and there were pretty much everything that art school had. I didn't have to take any academic classes, which is good for me because I struggled with academics. But so, and previous to that school, I started off not really understanding the difference between fine art and commercial art. I was interested in commercial art, which I don't even think that term's used as much anymore. But back then, that was commercial art, whether it's graphic design or whatever. But so I just I started going to one community college, just taking basically every art class they had. And it was, it was drawing, and it was painting, and it was a lot of life drawing, even some photography. It was more geared towards fine art, which, all those skills I still put into practice. So it was good that I did that. But eventually I had an instructor in a painting class, and I was showing him stuff that I was doing. And it was like logo designs. And again, I didn't know the difference. I thought it was all one thing. And today it took me a while to realize, because I always did kind of both. And then, I'd see these amazing illustrators that try to do graphic design, and they were just horrible. I'm like, how? It's the same thing. How are you good at one thing and not the other, and vice versa? But for some reason, I never separated the two. But anyway, so I that was sort of my college, I guess. That was what I was doing, and I got a couple of certificates. And before I could actually get a degree, I got hired out of there. So, and then it was just working in studios and the freelance and all that stuff from there. But I can say that, as much as I learned in school, I've learned more, probably more than that, just kind of on my own, teaching myself in the way that works for me a lot. For me, YouTube is just incredible because I need video. I need some people showing me how to do it. And I also need, it's very specific because I can't I can't watch, if there's a video of somebody showing you how to do something and they're not talking and explaining how they're doing it, if it's just text on the screen, I'm out of that video. I can't do that. So it's the auditory, it's the visuals. That's how I learn. And of course I did get that in school too. So but it's always a difficult question for me to answer whether you should go to school. Again, a lot of that is, financial if you're in a position. And a lot of it is, do you need that? How much do you need that structure? Because some people, because I know a lot of people that do the same thing that I do, and they have to go, they'll even rent an office that they have to go. And some of that has to do with if you've got young kids or whatever, and there's distractions there. But for me, I don't have any problem just being at home working, but different people are different ways. So it really depends on your level of discipline and how you learn, in a particular way you learn. So that's kind of what I would have to assess before I give that information. But you've done both now, but it sounded like it was eventually, it wasn't necessarily the school setting. It was something that you did on a live stream with Corey that kind of triggered something in your brain that, oh, this is what I want to do.
Right. Yeah. That was the thing that because I remember at the time being like, I want to, I'm doing it. I'm just not, I wasn't particularly motivated at the time, I think. Because for me, my learning has come from make a thing, finish it, make another thing, and then finish it and then make another thing. And so like for me, it was, I just needed that like external, hey, you can do this, you're just not making the time. And then I started making the time. So yeah.
And finishing is a big thing. And the
Mhm.
fact that, you know, do something, even if it's and I'll say this until I'm 6 feet underground, but even if it's super small, like I
Right.
love Corey's sticker stent, you know, you just do these simple stickers or whatever, because if you could just do things and get it done and create and make it a product, even if no one buys it, make it a product. And I mean, that's just going to, that sense of accomplishment and everything is just going to give you the confidence, and little by little you'll start building products. And I think that's really the way to go for artists. For me, I mean, that's what I'm doing, and I think the more people can create something that they can sell, whether it's a course, whether it's a digital product, whether it's prints, whatever. I just think having products to sell, I mean, to me, that's kind of where I think artists need to be looking at.
Yeah. Or even just something that's like, hey, you made it, but like, what are you going to do with it now?
Right. Yeah.
Or you made this thing, where are you going to put it? How are you going to put it up? Or you made this thing.
And it doesn't.
Is it going to make you money? How do you want to do that? Do you know how to do that? So like those things, just finishing some of those, because every artist wants to make the art. They don't want to do
and it doesn't have to
stuff
be
afterwards, you know?
It doesn't have to be one thing. I mean, I think whatever you could create, how can it be multiple things? Like you create a webcomic, is it just going to live on the web, or are you just going to design it at 72 DPI? No, you want to make it high res enough so you can do print, or you can take parts of that and snip it and make an animation out of it, or whatever else. Just whatever you create, because it takes a long time to create something. So that's why I'm really not big on just commissions, because it's a one-time thing. If you're doing something, a personal commission for somebody, you do that, you give it to them, that's it. There's nothing else, you know.
Right.
So that's why I like having, whether it's an IP or something that you're creating, whether it's a web comic, but then take that web comic and, okay, so, you know, I can make t-shirts on it, based on it, or I can, like I said, make it animated or whatever. You know, if there's a specific item, like that, something that the characters have to find it, whether there's a necklace or something, make the necklace, you know. I mean, of course you have to have some sort of a following for that to, you know, but I think that's kind of the end goal.
Yeah.
I think there's a couple of things about that are really good, because something like a comic, when I decided that I wanted to learn how to draw, I tried to think of something a project that I could do. Because up until that point, you know, that's how I taught myself photography and graphic design and filmmaking and editing and everything that I had learned from like, okay, well, I'm going to figure out a project that forces me to do that thing, and then I'm going to do it publicly. Like, even, I mean, I was doing this when MySpace was new, and people had just like a year or two later started talking about this thing called Facebook, but I wasn't allowed in because I'd already graduated from college, and it was only like certain campuses that were allowing it in. And I was still, you know, making stuff, and I'd build like a Joomla website or a Drupal website. And then eventually WordPress came out, and I built a WordPress website, but I would show my process publicly. And what I learned with that is that if you just make stuff, I don't think you're going to get as far as something that forces you to make stuff that also includes things that you might not want to make. Like, if you want to learn how to draw, I think a comic is one of the best ways to do it, because it's not that you get to draw Batman. You also have to draw Bruce Wayne and Bruce Wayne's house and his couch and the telephone and the car, you know, and whatever the story demands. Like, you have to figure out all that stuff, not just the stuff that you like.
Yeah.
And then it also puts you on a schedule, you know? And so when I decided that I want to learn how to draw, I started a comic called The Mixed, and I did 60 pages of that in about, I think it was under a year and a half. It was about a year and a half. I did 60 pages, fully colored and everything. And some of that was just awful garbage. And I got better, you know, And then I got into that trap of like, I finished the first chapter. I'm going to go back and fix some of those pages. So I redrew a couple of the pages or whatever.
Done that.
Yeah.
A lot already.
Yeah. But then I went and got a master's, and actually, Scott, the way you're describing your school kind of sounds like mine as well, because my master's degree is in illustration design, like the intersection of illustration and graphic design. And it was really interesting because that just made total sense to me. And all of my illustration professors said, you know what your problem is you think too much like a designer. And all of my graphic design professors would say, you know what your problem is you think too much like an illustrator. And I used to think, well, maybe my problem is just that I don't think like either of those or whatever. I don't know. But they shut that program down because they couldn't find enough qualified applicants to fill the program. Like there just wasn't enough people.
The program I was in was eventually shut down too. The college is still there, but they don't have an art program. It's mostly like nursing and stuff now. So.
Yeah, I mean it's SCAD that I went to, so they still have the art program. They still have the illustration program. They still have the graphic design program, but they don't have the combination of those two anymore.
Which is so weird because like those things go hand in hand. It's a very valuable skill to be able to do both.
I love the fact that I can do both.
I think once you realize that like film and photography and cross stitching and painting and graphic design, it all is following like Gestalt rules of composition.
Yeah.
And there's nuance within each of those applications, but like it's all composition, you know, and so I don't know, you can figure that stuff out. So I'm curious with you guys, did you focus on specific things? Because one of the things I noticed, Emily, with your work is your gestural anatomy and poses and acting of your characters got good really fast. And it seems like you just kind of like went from these really stiff, not quite T-pose characters, but almost T-pose characters, like just really stiff, face forward, hands down, not doing anything. And then like, I think you came back one semester and all of a sudden you had all these like fluid movement and everything. Was that like a specific exercise or choice that you went through? Did you do life drawing? Did you focus on that, or did that just happen when you started drawing more, or what?
Honestly, well, I had a phase. I'm like scrolling through my Instagram right now. I had a phase where I just drew a lot of magical girls and mermaids. And let's get there. Just a lot of magical girls and mermaids, fairies, and
I see what you're talking about without the the lines. It looks great,
right?
Yeah,
and it worked great for like illustrations and stuff. But like when I went over to comics, I tried to find ways to make it work, and I just couldn't.
So there's your children's book.
Yeah, here's my mermaids, and just had a lot of them. And then sticker stamp. I did more mermaids than this. Where are they?
Did you do mermaid?
Yeah, I did mermaid. Not like every day type of a thing, but I just got really into drawing like the fluidity stuff. I really like drawing girls because they're pretty, I guess, and hair is fun and stuff like that. But so I just kind of got more and more used to like the fluidity stuff because I feel like that just complements the figures better. But so that was more of like the interest drove the the art. But I didn't start like studying anatomy and studying gesture. Like I didn't start looking for gesture drawing sessions on YouTube until I was like, oh crap, I want to draw a comic. And so like I had been for a really long time, I just drew girls. I just wanted to draw pretty things. And so didn't know how to draw dudes, didn't know how to do their faces, didn't understand their posture, any of it. And so when I had started getting the sense of like I am definitely lacking this skill and I'm drawing the same things over and over again. I'm just drawing magical girls, and there's more to life than magical girls. So like I just started trying to branch out. But then when it turned to I'm going to draw a comic, I'm going to be doing backgrounds, there are male characters, there's several body types that, I have to have range. And so that's when I started like actively trying to, I took out like 9 months to write the scripts, like draft 1 of season 1 of the comic. And during that time, I was writing as much as I could. And then when I was finished, I'd have all these ideas in my head, and I'd want to draw the characters I'd been writing about and stuff. And so that's kind of where like actual hard study started to come in, where I'm like trying to figure out how to do a turnaround and like stuff like that, and so that's kind of, again, I think most of the time for me, it's been interest has driven the up in skill. And so, yeah.
What was your exposure to comics before doing it? Did you read like comics or manga or anything?
So the idea for my comic is an idea that I wanted to be a writer at some point. I'm so glad that I realized that I'm not a good writer, because it would be a terrible book. But I had an idea in high school, and I forgot about it. I wrote like little chapters and stuff of it. It was terrible. Also, like the concept is way better now than it used to be. But I forgot about it for like 10 years. And then a couple years ago, I was like, I remember that story. That was awesome. I want to make that. I can draw. And so then I was like, well, that means a comic. Well, then I should read comics. And then I started reading comics because I had the interest so I got into reading them because I wanted to make one. And so
that's cool.
Went with the aim of, I need to understand how this medium works. And so, and then I like fell in love with the webtoons format. Mm-hmm. And so like, I love like the kind of endless panel
scroll. Yeah.
Gorgeous. And so my first like exposure to like, cause I'd read some comics, I bought some, but my first exposure to like, this is the potential that you have when you break out of a page layout, was with Lore Olympus. And so good. Like those are beautiful, beautiful, beautiful panels. And so for me, I was like, I think I know what format I want to do this in. So yeah, I got really into webtoons after that.
What were you reading? I know you read Lore Olympus because you mentioned it.
Yeah,
in the past.
Obsessed.
Did you mention Saga? What else were you reading?
I want to read Saga because it looks amazing, but I got East of West. Didn't finish that one. I still have it. I'm intimidated by the sheer size of it, type of a thing.
Oh man, that's
the volumes and stuff.
Nick Drogetta, man, that's
yeah. But they're good. I like those. But each one has been like a new little, like my most recent like book that I got was it's a new one. I want to get into more horror comics. They're just really interesting. The Nice House on the Lake, very, very good. That's like my most recent like actual physical book read. It's like you don't have the beauty of like a page layout when you're reading a webtoon. It almost feels more like storyboards, like you're looking at something shot by shot. And it feels way more like you're watching something than you're reading a layout. But there's still like I'm endlessly impressed by the different layouts you can do with when you have the actual spread there. Yeah.
Yeah, you've got to read some Scott Snyder horror. He's doing one. I'm trying to look up the name of it. But he did a bunch. He jumped over to Substack and then released a bunch of stuff.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But one of them, and I think Scott, have you read any of his more recent stuff?
I haven't read any Scott Snyder, to be honest.
Oh man, American Vampire, Witches, all of those are really good. But he did that new 52 run on Batman, which is really good. Where is his Wake that he teamed up with Sean Gordon Murphy was really good. But he just released one, and I am not seeing it here. I'll have to find it. Oh, Night of the Ghoul. And Night of the Ghoul, his pitch for Night of the Ghoul is if all of the classic monsters were actually real, right? So you have Wolfman and Dracula and all that, like all of the classic monsters were actually real, but there was a ghoul monster that is actually creating them. And so the ghoul would go into like an old folks home and like haunt it, and then eventually one of those people would like mutate into the first werewolf, and then now there's werewolves or whatever. So he's like feeding on the fears of the zeitgeist by creating whatever monster would be the scariest at the time. And
okay, I gotta check this out.
I don't like horror because most of the time I don't like body horror and kind of the most recent the most recent Stranger Things I stopped at like episode 1 or 2 because it was I know everybody's telling
visceral though the last season.
It's just so much different than I like the tension and drama and suspense. I don't like just gore.
Be horrified.
Yeah. I used to watch like the USA Up All Night late night movies that they had where it was you'd watch the Creature in the Black Lagoon or the B movies like the piranhas attacking or whatever. But this is like a legitimately creepy book. It's like I've only read the first couple issues, but it is so good. And it's Franco Francavilla is the artist. Who's if you know him, you probably know him from his like movie posters. He does a lot of posters for Mondo and stuff. But he has like a extremely limited color palette. It's almost like
cool.
It's like a black and white, but there's always these kind of like oranges and warm tones kind of mixed in a really creepy way. And like the whole book is like that. So anyway, if you're looking for some good
comics with limited color palettes are brave and also like so beautiful and good. Yeah. But I feel like when I'm done with seeing red, I'd like to jump into horror. Like it's a fun genre when it's like not just cheap movie type stuff. You know what I mean? Like when you go into different mediums, it gets really, really interesting.
Yeah. Because I remember you and Eggfish would you guys would talk about like I call Amber. You guys would talk about like the video games that you're playing and stuff, and you liked those horrible video games that are just terrifying, like just the scary, like you're just wandering around, creeping through a haunted house. Anyway, I hate that stuff. I don't like being scared.
I mean, my husband and I have been like going through movies. Like it's funny because you say like you don't like body horror. I'm like, I watched The Fly the other weekend for the first time. I'm like, that was the best freaking movie ever. like I'm somebody like Jurassic Park is like my favorite movie. Remember the little kid Timmy and the part where they're about to get stampeded and then the T-Rex comes and like eats the stampede and they're like, we're like, we got to get out of here. And he like stands up. He's like, look at all the blood. This me. And they're like, come on, kid.
Funny.
So like I definitely want to delve into it when I'm done with this project. I want to do like horror, like some gross horror, I want to get some body horror in there because it's just like I'm kind of like that's a whole new art style to me.
Yeah,
like,
anything by Cronenberg who did The Fly is
right.
got an element of body horror to it.
But like that's all like I'm endlessly impressed by that stuff. I'm like, oh, somebody thought this up and made it like look insane. You know what I mean?
So this is a little bit more cartoony, but brutally violent. Have you read Invincible?
I watched Invincible and I loved it.
You gotta read it. So
I gotta read it. It's huge though. I get so intimidated by like comics that have existed and like have like
it's only like 18 inches of book. It's like I've got it on my shelves. It only takes about
I've
that
seen
much.
the one at Barnes and Noble, and it's saran wrapped, so that, or not saran wrapped, shrink wrapped, because it's
Right.
like so big that they're like, no, you gotta buy this, kid. You know what I mean? It's like, and it's huge. I just get intimidated by it. I don't know why. Like, there's a certain like the comics that are like people know. Everybody knows that this is like the best. You know, I'm like, oh, I don't. Do I pick it up? I don't know.
So Ryan Otley, who drew that book, he's now on Spider-Man. I was talking to him, and the whole premise of that, because initially it was Cory Walker, and he was good. You know, he's fine, and he's one of those artists that he's like an artist. Like a lot of artists are like really into Cory Walker stuff. Great character design and things. And then when Ryan took over, because it's written by I'm blanking on his name, the guy who does Walking Dead.
Yeah, Robert Kirkman.
Yeah. And so who's a great writer. He writes so many good things in so many different genres. Anyway, Ryan takes over. It takes maybe an issue or two for him to kind of get his feet wet. But then he was just like, as a kid, I was always really annoyed when like Superman would punch somebody and their head wouldn't explode, because if Superman punches you, your head's going to explode. And so
that's what I think all the time.
Right. And so Invincible is literally about this guy who is fighting people with like Superman level powers, but they are like punching through people. And like when somebody explodes, like it's not just like random explosion. You see like teeth and eyeballs and and it is, but it's cartoony almost a little bit.
I was going to say, what is it about that doesn't bother you, Corey? To me, I mean, I love horror, but I like more atmospheric. I do like body horror, but I'm not a fan of like slasher movies. So it's just,
and this is, I don't know, maybe there's not it's more of an, because I like action movies. I think it's more of an action movie style of.
There's a certain level of like unsettling that has to be brought in, that it goes from Invincible to Stranger Things, where way less violence happens, but it's so much more disturbing.
Yeah, I think it is about kind of I just don't like the unsettling creepiness of it, because in Invincible, Mark Grayson is a good person trying to do the right thing. I don't like the idea of like just creepy demonic evil things. And so if it's like one of those things where it's like, nah, you know, if it's a good person who doesn't know his own strength and he accidentally explodes a guy's head and then he feels bad about it and has PTSD for like 3 issues, that's to me just more entertaining, because I don't know. So I think, I don't know if it is it's also like, it's like in bright comic book colors, you know, it's not like in like really subdued, subtle, low lit noir tones.
They've got that primary color scheme. It is bright blue, bright yellow, and bright red. Like, I guess the other thing that kind of intimidates me, I am totally like one of the things that never even made me like consider comics for a really, really long time was just because it's like a boys thing. You know what I mean? Specifically superheroes are like, that's a boys thing. You know what I mean? And I always had
when I was growing up, but it's not so
but
much
it was
anymore.
I was a kid who watched Pokemon instead of Yu-Gi-Oh, because Yu-Gi-Oh was for boys. Like, it doesn't make sense. I obviously had the interest. I could have just like given myself permission, but like to me, like superheroes is like this thing that I never got into because that's a boys game, you know what I mean? And so like Invincible, I actually like it quite a bit, but there's parts where I'm like, this is too much tights and capes for me, even though it's awesome.
Yeah.
And so like that's the other part. I'm like, do I want to get a huge volume of this comic when like I don't know how much types and capes I'm gonna get in this compared to the stuff that interests me more. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just borrow mine. You just have to be careful with them because they're signed, but you can borrow them or read them all.
I can be careful. I was very scared to loan my books out as a child. I'm very careful with other people's books.
So I know recently you started tackling perspective, and you're using like the framed ink perspective books.
Yeah, I bought that. It's wonderful. I also like I don't know how it is with like the more traditional comics, you know, but like the webtoon game is like let's hurry it up. Like let's make this fast, right? So like I like started trying to figure out because I didn't know anything about perspective. Like I didn't know like why I would use 2-point instead of 1-point, for example. Now I know it's like, oh, if you're showing two sides of the cube, that's 2-point. You know what I mean? As opposed to just the front. But like I didn't even know that. And so I was like, I gotta know things before I just like go tool dependent. But I have Clip Studio now. It's great for
I was gonna ask what program you draw in because Clip Studio, those perspective tools.
Yeah, so
that's just revolutionary for me.
It's amazing. Yeah. Because like I'm all for fudging those outdoor scenes. Okay, just put a bush in front of this and then you're good, you know. And then but the indoors you can't hide. So and in buildings you can't hide. I'm still not good at that stuff, but like I started figuring out the perspective tool. Also, I have zero interest in drawing cars, and there's a utility van that's like it is like kind of it's not there all the time, but it's there for like there's like 6 scenes where it's all in the car, you know. And so I bought a 3D model where I was like, I'm not gonna figure out how to draw a van. I don't need to. I don't like cars. I don't care about cars. I just have to draw the car. So like there's definitely stuff like that where I'm like, no, I'm going to shortcut this for sure. And then there's other things where I got to know something like foundationally for me to be successful at this and understand what's going on. So yeah, I've been trying to tackle that. Backgrounds are still wildly unexciting to me. And so I do my establishing shots. I make the establishing shot all right, and then I get away with as much as I can when that shot is gone. So
yeah, for backgrounds, I kind of I don't know. I prefer drawing not people. Mm-hmm. Like I'm so bad at drawing people that I will almost draw anything else. And so if there's an excuse to do like more of an Eastern style of storytelling where I like focus on like a mug on the person's desk and then their hand and then you know the doorknob and then a bird that's flying by or something, and then you know then I'm like, well, that's 3 or 4 panels where I don't have to draw a person. The one thing I would recommend is go do some plein air painting or go do some observational drawing. Like if you were to do and go somewhere incredible where you're just like blown away by something,
right?
And, like go like I was just up in Banff,
right?
And it's like I'm going to be drawing from the photos that I took up there for years, and like I just have like a couple in my sketchbook where I just sat down for like 10 minutes and I'm just doing it in ink and stuff. And it's like if it's a really interesting background, I think it kind of helps.
It helps, yeah. Which is funny because we did the opposite when we did that music video. I did all of the backgrounds and you did the people.
Yeah.
I remember you asking me to do the backgrounds. I was like, me? Why? And then it was the art style, but I was like, I don't draw a lot of. Where's this coming from? But yeah.
No, but I did. That was an interesting collaboration. So if you guys have seen Shades, I laid it out. I did the pencils, and then Emily executed it, and then I animated it. And Unfortunately, it's one of my favorite scenes, but the way that it was timed out, it's like one of the shortest blips because
It's one of the like speed through them.
Right. It's when she starts getting really frenetic and overwhelmed. It's the Dr. Seuss scene.
I love the colors. I don't know how I got it in me to turn out such beautiful pinks, but I got it.
No, that scene
colors made me so happy.
That scene was great.
But the Be Mine, that's the name of it. That one. Yeah. That one was like, I don't remember how many hours that was, but like all of those backgrounds, like I remember being like, why did he want me to do this? This is, I don't, then yeah.
Well, ironically, it's because I have really thick outlines and you don't, you do.
And I didn't,
you do.
Yeah, I didn't have the line.
So I was watching a lot of animation to try to figure it out. And there on Disney Plus, there's some, and I hate Mickey Mouse most of the time. Yeah, most of the time I think Mickey Mouse is just super boring. But there are these like European shorts, and they are awesome. They're so good. And the way that it worked was these beautifully painted backgrounds and then inked characters. And so I was looking at that, and then you see like Chuck, back in the Roadrunner days was doing the same thing, Chuck Dixon, and like a lot of that stuff. And so I started to see that. Jones. Yeah. Sorry. Who's Chuck Dixon?
I don't know.
That's not a person.
Is he a comic? I'm not sure.
I don't know. I called that over the air. Chuck Jones. But he's painting like Zion National Park and monuments and stuff like that. And they're just, but they're painted, and then you have the heavy line work on the characters. And so that's why as I was like, I'm not good at painting lineless stuff. I hate painting in general. If I could do everything without any color, I would, but everybody hates it. Artists love black and white stuff, but consumers like color. Yeah. But anyway, so that's why I was doing that.
I remember being like, you gotta stop avoiding backgrounds at some point, Emily. Do it. Do the project. So yeah.
Yeah, and it was great. And I said I need a butterfly, just a real simple butterfly.
And then I was like, how about a hollow butterfly where it reflects the rainbow?
So we did an iridescent glasswing butterfly that took me 6 hours to rig. Just to rig it, because you had like 40 layers or something.
No, I had more than that. I'm sure of it.
Yeah, it was a ridiculous.
I give you options. When I build assets, I give people options. So True. it's like, okay, I don't know how he's gonna animate this. So I've got a gradient that goes the rainbow this way. I've got the rainbow going the other way, and then I've got it going this way and this way, and the wings are going to flap. So like, I've got different varying levels of opacity of it, or like I just did all of that. And then I was like, you might use a third of these layers, but
no, I used them all. That's probably what took me 6 hours. But if you watch that, so that's in the music video Be Mine. If you watch that, Emily did all the backgrounds and then did when the camera flies down her throat and we see inside of her chest cavity with her heart, like
the rib cage.
You did the whole rib cage scene.
The rib cage is probably my favorite. It was so. You were like, let's make it lush, and I was like, I love lush. So like I don't like doing backgrounds that much, but I do really like doing like trees and leaves and like flora, and so I kind of went ham on them, like some of those. I was like, this is delicious. So yeah,
that's good. Well, one of the things, and we're at an hour, so we can start wrapping up the next little bit. But one of the things that I have stolen from you is when you were an art director for the student run advertising agency, you started teaching everybody, all the graphic designers, who most of which were not illustrators.
Right.
You just started telling them, you can learn how to draw now, or you can learn how to avoid it for the rest of your life. Like you're just going to have to work around the fact that you can't draw for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
And I always thought that's such a good way of putting that, because I think people who are in visual that can't draw have to do so many things to get around the fact that they can't just draw it.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I stole that from Saul Bass.
Okay.
I don't remember the quote, but I stole it from Saul Bass. But like, because he is like super delicious graphic design, right? But he was like, draw, please.
Yeah.
Like, please. And so, like, that has been my imploring thing. Like, just draw. Like, I know that you told yourself you suck at drawing, but like, you can do it. Anybody can do it. Just stop telling yourself that you suck, because you can just get it done. Just work on it, and you'll get it done. You'll get there, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because like, I think one of the things that like really was like, you can see the major pitfall of being like, well, I can't draw, is like we'd see storyboards, and it was like a floating stick figure and like a line in the background. I'm like, this isn't a shot. And they're like, well, I can't draw, it's on paper, I put it in the wrong thing, and then it ended up halfway of the thing. I'm like, well, then erase it and do it again. Like, I don't know what this is. And so like, part of it was like, hey, like, you can see right now how you avoiding learning how to draw is bottlenecking a project, you know? And so, yeah, that was definitely one of my things. And that's when I taught for a couple semesters. I was like, I know this is scary, but you can do it. And there's literally nothing stopping you other than yourself, you know? Like, you can do it. And if you decide not to do it, you will forever be building crutches for yourself, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I like that a lot, because I just think, I mean, kind of like we started at the beginning of this conversation, I think that everybody is an artist, you know, as a kid. Like, there are not kids out there that aren't artists, you know?
Right.
By the time you're 5 or 6, you're drawing all the time and doing stuff. I mean, that's like before people communicate verbally, they can draw things, and they can, you know, and then we kind of like, through society and parents and like all the adults in people's lives, their teachers and school and all this stuff, we like kind of teach everybody not to do that. But I mean, it's there. And it's really interesting to me, because I teach communication students. So I don't teach art students. So I teach communication students. So I'm teaching.
They've got those insecurities of, I don't know how to draw, I'm just creative.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I make them sketch, and I make them, you know, do stuff. And I have like, I force them to do it. And it's always fun to see, you know, those handful of students where it just cracks something wide open, and they kind of like run with it. And then they start, you know, I remember this one student, and she came to me and she said, I don't know what to do. And I said, what do you mean? She was really distressed. She's like, well, I'm a PR major, and I just finished your class, and I'm like, I've got a job lined up and everything. And I realized something that is horrible. And I'm like, what? She's like, I love watercolor. And I'm like, wait a minute, what are you talking? Why is this a horrible? Really? She's like, I've wasted my whole education learning all this other stuff, and I was like, you can do watercolor all the time. Like, you can spend the rest of your life doing watercolor. You've got decades. No one is going to look at your degree and say, oh, your degree says you can't do this, so why are you doing this, or whatever. And it was like, it's so funny to me, probably because I'm like a rebellious punk guy, but like, I just rebel as like a natural instinct. Like, if there's an authoritarian figure that tells me that I should do something, I'm going to do the opposite, or can't do something, right, figure out a way to do that thing. That's just like my natural instinct. But not everybody like that. And there's so many people out there that need permission to like do the thing that they really want to do. They like really want to do it. And you just sit there and you say, you can do it. You know, I'm an authority figure, and I'm granting you permission to do the thing that you feel, you know, gives you purpose in life.
Yeah.
And it's so weird to me that exists. But Stephen Henderson, who we had him, he's a writer, and he teaches with me. I've been bugging him for years. He just presented he went on a sabbatical last semester, and he just presented it today in the department meeting, and he is 200 pages into his book. So he's written 200 pages and said publicly, so now I'm gaining a reputation as this guy, if you want to get something done, tell Corey that you're slightly interested in it, and he will bug you all the time. And he will pester you until it becomes like a habit. He's like, I've got 200 pages done because I was tired of listening to Corey Kerr just bug me all the time.
I mean, yeah, you are that person. Like you do that a lot.
I'm
and
a
it works.
really annoying motivator. Yes.
Because you're like the person who's like, well, and you give the uncomfortable truth of like, why are you not doing this? You know you can. There's nothing stopping you. You just do this, and this, and then they're like, I was making this more complicated in my head.
Right.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah. So if anybody's watching this and you've been putting something off, or tinkering with, or the biggest pet peeve of mine, talking about it a lot and not finishing anything, just like stop talking about it and just finish 80% of it within the next week. Just like do what you've got to do to get it done.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Think about your impending death.
Yeah.
Also works.
That's a good way. You're all going to die soon, and robots are going to automate everything anyway. So you might as well get something done now before they figure all that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know, Scott. Any final thoughts on teaching yourself how to draw? I mean, you've done whole courses of hundreds.
Yeah,
of
Frank
hours.
had mentioned that earlier in the chat. That but what did he say? Here, hold on. So do you need to go to art school, or can you watch an extensive?
I watched that, by the way.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, everything. Everything is. It again. It just kind of depends on how you learn. But anything you want to learn really is on YouTube. It may not be as easy to find. That's why I created that course, because you could find all that information that I talked about on the internet, but it's here, it's there, it's everywhere. It's not was nothing, in sort of any kind of order. Or if you're willing to pay some money, there's at one point, this was a while back, but I forgot who the artist was, but he put together the $10,000 art education, which,
Right.
is all stuff that you could either take online or whatever, sign up for courses for $10,000, and you can get just as good of education as any art school had offered. So there's tons of options out there. I mean, you could definitely do that. Now, again, that may not work for somebody. If you can't sit down at your home and buckle down without getting distracted, then that might not be the way to go. If you need more hands-on, if you need an instructor, and then I assume every art school or every, any kind of art classes that I've taken and what you teach, Corey, it's the instructors kind of their hands-on. It's not like some things where you just got a guy lecturing or a woman lecturing, right, and that's all it is, and there's no really much interaction.
No, I think that's the real value of it, because I was going to say, like, the downside to YouTube learning is you get all really valuable information,
right?
But very seldom do you get somebody telling you where your work sucks.
Exactly. Or, mentors is another thing. If you can find somebody that can mentor you, or there's a lot of places out there that offer those kind of, private groups that you can join.
Yeah.
And you not only get the input from whoever's running that group, but also the other community members. So there's so many different opportunities and ways to learn. I mean, it's just, it's almost like there's no excuse. You just have to dedicate yourself to actually want to do it, because the resources are there. I mean, younger people today are just so, they're so far ahead of the game because of the internet and the things you can learn. Back when we've talked about this, where, when I was trying to learn, everything was a trade secret, carefully guarded. You don't just share that information. You got to learn it the hard way. So that attitude has changed. People are willing to put information out there and share that with people, which is great because I mean, you can just learn at such a faster rate if you're willing to. So,
yeah. And I think one of the things that's really important with that is try to seek valid critique from authority, like people who understand what's going on, more than you seek, maybe not more, but our natural instinct is to kind of shy away from people who are going to tell you what sucks. And I've only been drawing for 10 years, but I've been doing visuals for, I don't know, longer than I wanted to think about, but 20 plus years. But it still hurts to get critique. And I've worked, and Scott has as well, and Emily has as well, in the workforce where like you can't get sad and leave. Like you have, you can't cry. You can't like, you just have to like take it. And when somebody tells you, you've worked really hard you poured your heart and soul into something, and you've lost sleep over it and skipped meals to, like thinking about it and then you show it to your art director or your client or your boss or, whatever, and they're just not into it. Even if they say nice things, you can tell that they don't like it. It's like the most gut-wrenching, horrible feeling ever. But it's just part of the job. Like, it's just like, you just have to figure out a way to like, separate yourself from the hurt and understand the critique. And like, I think, so in my master's, I think one of the most valuable things, and when I say this, it sounds horrible, but we were doing a portfolio review really early on. And I was one of those guys who was like the media guy in small companies, right? And so I would do the design and the photography and the video and the whatever and the this and the that. And when you're in design, you don't get to have a style in graphic design. Like in illustration, you kind of can have a style, but in graphic design, you do what the client needs. You have the voice of the brand that you're doing. And so I kind of applied that to drawing. And so when I showed up with my portfolio, this guy, Mohammed Danawi, who I can count this comment as like the time when I got laser focused and really started going down the path that I went down, is he looked at my portfolio and he said, "This portfolio looks like it was done by 6 different people poorly." And he's like, it's horrible. It's like all over the place. Like there's no common thread. Like you can tell that like, there's some stuff that could be good, but like you're not good at anything because you're trying to do it all. Like you're trying to do everything. Like quit being what you think everybody wants you to be and just be who you are as an artist, And I had been trying to do so many different things. I think I still to this day admire the people who can like paint like either digitally or traditionally, like a realistic looking thing. I just can't. That's just not who I am. I'm just like a pen and ink, brush and ink guy. And like, so when I finally like, he just shut this, and I didn't know that I was consciously doing that. I was coming at it from a graphic design perspective, where it's like, look at all the things that I can bring you. Here's all the stuff that I can do. Yeah. And he just ripped me to shreds, and it was public, and it was in front of 20 other people, and it was like, it was the best experience because after that, I was just like, I'm just going to do pen and ink until I feel like, I've gotten good enough to that where it deserves color. And so I spent years just doing black and white stuff because of that. And I think YouTube is great and there's a lot of really good value in it. But I agree with Scott. Find a mentor who is going to tell you when you suck at something and have a good enough relationship with that person that you don't run away from them when they say that.
The other thing that I want to mention that like a college setting will help you out is just just your peers. And I apply that to most of the art jobs where I was an employee. I was probably one of 2 artists, but when I worked for the game company, there was a number of different artists, and that upped my game so much. Just being around other artists that were just amazing and not wanting to be the weak link in
Right.
the chain, and I gotta really up my game and everything. So
Yeah.
So it's definitely good to have those, those peer artists that you can, be inspired by. And don't be intimidated, but just be inspired by them.
I can't remember who said this, but somebody said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you got to find a different room. Yeah. And I remember one of my motivations in school, because I am super cheap. Like I grew up kind of poor. And so like spending $311 a day to go to graduate school was like, just hurt my soul every morning that I woke up. And so there was no way that I wasn't going to squeeze every single drop out of that thing. And so what I did was every assignment, everything that I did, I wanted it to beat everybody else in the class. And I didn't always achieve that, but like my goal was, I don't just want to be the best in the class. I want to be the best in the class by so far that it's like ridiculous. And so like I remember because I was to pay for a school, I had to live in like a really small crappy apartment that didn't have internet. And so I remember like camping out in my buddy's like driveway at like 3 a.m. so I could submit something and steal his Wi-Fi to submit it or whatever. And so I'd always be over at his house, because this is Libert. He'd always be over at his house and be like, he'd be like, wait, you're still working on this? Didn't you finish this like 3 days ago? I'm like, yeah, but I made it better, and he's like, why are you still doing this? Like you met the requirements of the assignment already. And I'm like, yeah, but I could get it a lot better. And that type of attitude is really, I think, good too. So if you're surrounded by a bunch of people that are as good as you are, you're not going to get much better. But if you surround yourself by people that are a lot better than you are and you try to beat them, that's a really good stretch as well. I like that a lot, Scott. That's a good comment. So good. Well, any other, Frank is asking, so I shouldn't ask my 11-year-old for critiques. If your audience is 11-year-olds, you can ask what they think.
My advice to to all of this is that like sometimes you don't have control over your external factors or whatever, but like the thing that you can control is you. Like just make stuff. Just make stuff and then finish it and then make it. And it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, just make it.
And it will get better. If it's not good, when you make it, it'll get better. The more you make it, the better.
Be happy when you made a bad thing, because it means that you stuck to this thing that you kind of hated, and now it's over, and the next one you make is not going to be that bad. It's not going to be as bad as the last one. So just like make time, do the thing, and show up. Show up and things will start to happen. Yeah,
that's awesome. I love it. Let's end on that. I think that's a good note to end on. So I'll point out that if you're interested in buying the shirt that Scott is wearing, you can find that at CoreyKerr.com in my store there. It's like the only product I have for sale right now. It's the First Amendment, which is the coolest amendment, I think, that allows us to do all this creative expression without being locked up in the gulag, especially if you're saying things against the state, which I like to do often. But yeah, and you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. Shades is available. Be Mine, which Emily did all of the backgrounds for. That's up on that site as well. You can see the scene that she animated it or illustrated in Shades, and there's a couple other things. And Emily, where can we find your stuff? And when are you going to start releasing episodes of Seeing Red? Because I know you've got the preview thing going right now.
Yeah, so I have a date. It's just not officially announced yet, but it will.
Just do it tonight after we get off.
Oh, no. There's factors involved. I actually tried to announce it yesterday, but they don't because the contest is still being judged. I can't post anything to it. If it weren't for that, I would be. Go. I don't remember what the question was, but go read Seeing Red on Webtoons, or follow me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Guminelly, right there. Website is guminelly.com. And
there's a big link. There's a big link to Seeing Red on Guminelly.com, right?
There's it's like the first thumbnail. It's read.
And I assume there's a link in the description too, right, Corey?
Yeah, there is also in the description of this video.
Yeah, but there will be episodes soon. I can't tell you when, but no, it's soon, and I'm like losing my mind with how excited I am about it. So
Right, stick around. Scott, where can we find your stuff and tell us about Artcasters?
Okay, right now the only thing that I want to promote is my Kickstarter because it is less than 24 hours before it all wraps up. So go to youngandthedead.com. It's a kids versus zombie adventure story in the vein of Goonies and Night of the Living Dead. So imagine all those great 80s action adventure films, Goonies, Monster Squad, E.T., Explorer, Stand By Me, Flight of the Navigator, Cloak and Dagger, all that kind of stuff. But imagine that with zombies. So yeah, definitely check that out. There's tons of cool rewards, especially there are some variant covers there's one by Corey, there's one by Josh, and one by Gary Hodges and some other awesome artists. Definitely check those out. There's a pack that you can get all those variant covers, which is super cool. But yeah, time's running out. So this is your last chance. So definitely check that out. And then this show that we do, I should also promote, just definitely check out Josh's stuff. Go to joshuakimball.com. I assume it's joshuakimball.com, right?
Yeah, it is.
Okay. And, he's got a number of books that he's either working on or that he already has published. So definitely check that out. And as far as this show, the Artcasters, we do this show every single week, except for took a break last week. But typically we do it every single week. Although it does kind of rotate between channels. And now it's getting a little even more confused because before it wasn't on Corey's channel for a while. Now it's not going to be on Josh's for a while. Eventually it will be back to Josh's and Corey's and mine. It gets confusing to know exactly where it's going to be. But if you want to know exactly when we're going to go live, whose channel it's going to be on, what time, who the guest is going to be, just join our mailing list because YouTube doesn't always inform people. So just there's a link in the description for that too. Join the mailing list. We don't spam you, anything like that. All we do is like about 30 minutes before we go live, we send out an email and it's got the link with all that information. So definitely check that out.
Yep,
Youngandthedead.com. One more time.
Yep, and all those links are in the description. Go to Young and the Dead and back it before it's too late, and you can get good stuff. All right, we'll see you guys next week.
All right.